morning, everybody. I'm Libby Spencer, the president of the Hopkins County Regional Chamber of Commerce, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today for the 2021 legislative preview. We have some great guests with us today. I do want to give you a little information. It's Monday. It's been Monday all day, and Ashley has been called in to testify, which I think is very exciting. It shows the value of the chamber in our state. So I'm excited that she's testifying today, but we do have a special guest that will be taking her place. But today we have joining us Jacqueline Pitts, who's going to be the Director of Communication for the Kentucky Chamber. We also have Mr. Robert Berry, I like to call him Bob, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Big Rivers Electric Corporation, and Melinda Prunty, our representative. So we are so excited to have those guests with us today. And before we go any further, I really want to say thank you to Big Rivers. They are not only our partner in Hopkins County, they're not only a member of the chamber, they are the sponsor of today's event. And I'm so excited to have Mr. Berry with us. And I'd like to do just a little introduction. He has a very long bio, I can say very, very impressive. We're grateful to call you our friend. But I do want to say that in July 2014, Mr. Berry was elected as President and Chief Executive Officer of Big Rivers Corporation. He has more than 40 years experience in the utility industry and extensive experience in the electric utility industry. Mr. Berry is an active ambassador to many communities, including Hopkins County. He serves on the Greater Owensboro Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors in the Henderson Community College Foundation Board. He's a lifelong resident of Davis County, where he currently resides. And I would like to say, Bob, thank you so much on behalf of the Hopkins County Regional Chamber of Commerce and our Board of Directors for everything that you do, not only for Hopkins County, but for our region. So I'd like to welcome you officially and thank you for opening us up today.
Well, thank you, Libby, and thanks for that kind introduction. As Libby said, I'm Bob Berry. I'm the president and CEO of Big Rivers Electric. And we're excited to have the opportunity to sponsor the 2021 legislative preview, along with the Madisonville Hopkins County Chamber of Commerce and the Kentucky Chamber. I'm very disappointed we could not be together in person, but this year's changes associated with the COVID-19 pandemic really highlights the importance of businesses who are actively involved in shaping a public policy. I want to express my sincere gratitude to the organizations such as these two chambers who keep advocacy at the center of their mission, as well as the men and women serving or running in elected positions across our communities, state and the union. The decision to serve your community through elected office is not one that should be taken lightly, and it does require a huge deal of sacrifice regardless of the party's position. So thank you to all of you. For those that may not know as much about Big Rivers, we are a generation and transmission electric cooperative. We employ about 420 individuals, and we provide wholesale power to our 3 member owners. We are owned by 3 distribution cooperatives: Jackson Purchase, headquartered in Paducah, Kenergy Corp, located in Henderson, Kentucky, and Meade County RECC, located in Brandenburg. And collectively, those 3 distribution co-ops serve 118,000 homes and businesses across 22 Western Kentucky counties. In addition to that, we also provide power through long-term contracts with several members of the Kentucky Municipal Electric Association, entities in Nebraska, OMU, and earlier this year, we entered into an agreement to obtain 260 megawatts of solar power from 2 developers, which is currently the state's largest renewable project to date. So kind of needless to say, the decisions, laws, and regulations enacted from local city commissions to the halls of Congress have a significant impact on our industry, our businesses, our member owners, and our employees. So as we kind of close out this very trying year and prepare for the opportunities and challenges ahead, it's important that we as individuals and community leaders remain engaged with our elected officials and serve as a voice for the members, employees, families, and communities we represent. So speaking of voice of membership, it's my pleasure today to introduce Jacqueline Pitts. She is the Director of Communications for the Kentucky Chamber. And so Jacqueline, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you for Libby for having us today. Again, I am Jacqueline Pitts. I am the Director of Communications at the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, filling in for Ashley Watts, who is testifying in front of lawmakers today about important issues over at the Capitol. So she hates that she couldn't be here with you guys today, but I'm excited to fill in. I've been working with Libby some the past week, and I know you guys are all working really hard in your community. And so I'm excited to speak with everybody today. Just to give you guys a little bit of background about me, I am, so again, the Director of Communications, but I run a news site for the Kentucky Chamber. That's what I was hired to do. I started out as a political reporter at CN2 Pure Politics, which is now Spectrum. The Chamber called and said, do you want to start your own news site? And here we are 6 years later. I now oversee all communications. During session, I'm over at the Capitol with our lobbyists, writing stories, trying to keep you guys and the rest of the business community informed of what's going on, especially as traditional news media has kind of changed the way they do things. So that's kind of my main focus, but overseeing all things communications at the Chamber as well. So basically, just to get started today, obviously 2020 has changed everything for all of us. Everybody, all businesses at the beginning of this year in March had to shut down at no fault of their own, and for different regions and different sectors. Of course, my dogs are going to start fighting right now while I'm on this. But everybody had to change the way they do everything, and we're still being impacted. Of course, all of us thought at the beginning that this was not going to last very long, and here we are. It's the end of 2020. The first vaccine was just distributed in Kentucky just an hour or so ago. Story up on the bottom line about that if you want to read it. But so today, Beshear called it the beginning of the end of this pandemic. So hopefully we're all hoping to see some changes in the next couple months as people get vaccinated, starting to get back to normal. But obviously it's been a rough year. 2020 has been very difficult. So, and Libby and I just went over last week, a lot of you guys, thank you again for participating in a survey about how this has impacted you as business owners in your region. And you guys had a great turnout in terms of those responses. And it's obvious that it really is hitting your area, from everything to concerns about unemployment insurance, to needing broadband, to everything. So as we go into 2021, obviously the Kentucky Chamber is heavily focused on how to move forward, how to get our economy back on track. And so we have a legislative agenda, and that's kind of what I'm going to cover with you guys today, about things that we feel could be realistic to get the economy back on track, policies that we could really get passed that will help all businesses across Kentucky. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. I think I can get started here. Okay. So the road to recovery is what we're calling our legislative agenda for 2021 as we seek to get Kentucky back on track and get businesses back to where they need to be following the pandemic. So the biggest thing about the Kentucky Chamber that a lot of people don't know or are confused about in terms of our policies is how we get to those policies. A lot of people think that the lobbyists and some of our key staff sit in a room and say to each other, okay, this is what we support. We want the gas tax. We want this, we want that, but that's not it at all. It actually starts with our whole membership. We send out a survey to our membership asking them which policies they support. And then we take it to our policy committees, our councils. We have a lot of those in different areas, and they hear both sides of an issue and they vote on it. And then it goes to our board and our executive committee. So it's actually a very lengthy process. And again, as chamber members, you guys understand what a Chamber of Commerce is and how it functions. We are a membership-driven organization. So here's our board of directors. These are our bosses. These are the people who are helping run this state and who are coming up with our policies and helping us enforce them. So obviously, as all of you know, we have a Democratic Governor Andy Beshear, who is in office, and Republican control in the Senate and the State House. Not just Republican control, Republican supermajorities, especially after the elections in November. The House, I don't think anyone saw it coming. They now have 75 members. I'm sure that Representative Prunty is excited about that. It's going to be very interesting to see how the things change. And so we're going to get into session, but the main thing is This is a short session. This is a 30-day session. They're either 60 or 30 days. 60-day sessions, you have to craft a budget and they deal with some other stuff as well. 30-day is usually shorter, obviously, and they deal with other issues. This year, they have to craft the second year of the budget, which is going to be very difficult, something they usually do not do at all during a 30-day session. You've heard a lot of people talking about wanting to rein in the governor's executive order power, so they'll be talking about that. They're supposed to redistrict in 2021 and kind of redraw their areas. The Republicans have not had a chance to do that as they've had control of the House because it's not been done for 10 years. And Republicans didn't have control of the House until 2016. And before that, it was 100 years before they had controlled the House. So it'll be their first chance to draw their own lines in the House, which is even more impressive. They have 75 members under a map that they did not draw. There's been not a lot of talk about redistricting, but I'd be shocked if they don't at least begin that conversation this year because it's been so long since they've had that opportunity. But again, they have to draft the budget. They have to deal with COVID stuff. They have to deal with the governor the way that they want to. So it's going to be a very strange year with a lot of issues at stake. So it'll be very interesting in 2021 to see how these three men and those two chambers deal with the governor. And it's going to be a very interesting year. So here's some of the things that we as the Kentucky Chamber are very focused on. Investing in our infrastructure is absolutely critical. We know this. Businesses across Kentucky know this. You can just look at Northern Kentucky where the Brent Spence Bridge has been closed down. That is a huge issue, not only for Kentucky and the businesses that are in that region, but there are companies and products from all over the country that go across that bridge. And it's just devastating to have this kind of problem. And obviously the Brent Spence Bridge isn't our only issue in terms of Kentucky infrastructure. We currently don't have enough money to even repair and maintain the roads that we currently have, much less build any new infrastructure. Again, for businesses, this is a huge issue because not only is it the safety of people in your area, it's moving products. And that's huge for if a company wants to come to Kentucky, they have to know they can get their products, especially as we want to be a manufacturing hub and things along those lines. We've got to have good infrastructure. And again, it's a safety issue. It's just a lot of things. And infrastructure encompasses a lot of things too. It's our roads and bridges, but we're also talking about broadband infrastructure. We're talking about a lot of things here. Infrastructure and transportation needs have been a key priority of ours for 5 years now. We've been trying to pass a bill to raise the gas tax for 5 years because again, we don't have the money to deal with our problems or build new infrastructure. And obviously raising the gas tax does not sound like a very fun thing for anybody. But the thing is, the gas tax is actually more of a consumer fee. It's the only thing where you spend that money at the pump and it goes to roads and bridges. It doesn't go elsewhere. Whereas the rest of your tax money, you're never quite sure exactly where it's going. So, and it's something that we all use on a daily basis. And especially, Kentucky hasn't made quite as much of a move toward electric vehicles and things like that. But as we see more and more of that, obviously they're not paying for the roads that they're using because they're not using gas. And so these are all things that have to be discussed. The pandemic made this problem even worse because we were all in our houses. We weren't driving anywhere. There was nowhere to go for a couple months there. But still people are in their homes. They're not driving. They're not utilizing the roads. And so they're not filling up their tanks. And so our road fund is depleted even further. So this is going to be another ongoing discussion and it has to get done in our opinion. Obviously we would love for it to pass this year. Representative Sal Santoro, who is always the sponsor of that bill, has already pre-filed a resolution to say that it has to get done. The full bill has not been filed yet, but usually it's been a wait till the last second and file the bill. But this year he's really making an effort to show everyone like, we have to do this. So here's the first intention and we're going to move forward from there. So this will be a key priority of the Kentucky Chamber once again in 2021. And like Amy said in the chat box, you guys feel free to ask any questions. I'm all about questions. I'd rather answer things than blabber at you guys. So feel free to ask any questions that you need to. So obviously COVID-19 has caused a lot of new problems for Kentucky businesses, Kentucky schools. A lot of this has to do with liability. When you open your business back up, when schools reopen, obviously there's a huge concern about what if someone gets COVID in my place of business, in my school. So especially if you're following all of the rules, the CDC guidance, the regulations that have been put in place at the state level, you should feel safe in your own business that you can continue to work and get things done without the fear of being sued, without the fear of frivolous lawsuits. So that's what we're working on. At the federal level, there's some discussion about it. We're pushing it there as well, but at the state level, we need those protections too. In 2020, at the end of session, we were able to work with legislators and get some protections for manufacturers who had changed their whole scheme in order to produce PPE, which I didn't know what PPE meant before March. I don't think any of us did, unless you're in healthcare. These are all new terms, new issues that we are not used to. So we are working to figure these things out as we go. And this is one of those huge issues that is going to be top priority for us, especially protecting businesses as we move forward. Unemployment insurance. When you guys filled out the survey, Hopkins County, when you guys filled it out, unemployment insurance, you guys are really concerned about it, as you should be. Obviously, when the pandemic started, again, businesses had to close down at no fault of their own. Restaurants and bars up until today still were closed down once again. We've seen a lot of them go out of business. Some are still just trying to hold on and see what the new year is going to look like before they make some of those final decisions. But all of that means that there are more people on our unemployment insurance rolls than ever. We spent more money out of our unemployment insurance trust fund in a couple months than we had in years before. And we had just gotten to a place where our unemployment insurance fund was at a positive balance, that we were doing better, that we were seeing progress. Then the pandemic hit. And we've already had to take out a federal loan to pay back the claims because the fund is at a balance of 0. And so we're already dealing with that federal loan. And what that federal loan means is that businesses have to repay it. We've seen this before during the economic downturn. In the recession, we had to take out some federal loans. We had just paid that back a couple years ago. But it's businesses who have to pay this back. Your surcharge goes up. What you pay into the unemployment insurance fund goes up, whether you laid people off or not. It affects all businesses equally. And so this is something that we're very, very concerned about, because obviously businesses have already taken a huge hit at no fault of their own. And it could be the last straw on the camel's back for a lot of businesses across Kentucky. So the governor has already said that he will put $200 million of the CARES Act fund dollars into that paying back of the federal loan. But the loan is over $800 million. So that definitely helps, but there's going to be some issues in 2021 when it comes to unemployment insurance, that fund, and how we pay for it and how we move forward. So the Kentucky Chamber, that is a key priority of ours. We've been really sounding the horn on that over the last couple months. Really, Ashley Watts has been talking about it since the beginning of the pandemic. And so we are the loudest voice on that, and we are trying to do everything we can to make sure that that issue is fixed. Oops. Pro-growth tax reform is something that we have always been very interested in, obviously, especially as we're dealing with these issues. Before the pandemic, Kentucky still didn't have enough money to do what it needs to do. Our budgets were always tight every year. We've always struggled in these areas. So not only do we want to see more revenue from the Kentucky Chamber standpoint, which surprised people when we first came out with that position, but it's critical that Kentucky finds some more money. That doesn't mean raise taxes. That means change some things around. It means pro-growth. We want to move toward more of a consumption-based tax system than taxing productivity and things along those lines. So we are, again, focused on tax reform, because once we look at the budget again this year, we're going to need more money yet again, and it's just going to get worse. So that is something that we continue to advocate for. Substance use disorder recovery efforts. So this is something that you wouldn't expect the Kentucky Chamber or the business community to be involved in any way. But obviously a couple years ago, we started to look around and we noticed that this was a huge issue for Kentucky, which we all know it does not have any socioeconomic boundaries. It affects everyone. We all at least know someone who has struggled, or someone whose family member has struggled. We all kind of know someone at this point. And this is a workforce issue, especially now as we have Kentucky companies who, especially before the pandemic, needed workers. But now we need to be looking at people who are qualified for positions as well, all across the board. So we have launched our Kentucky Comeback campaign. I would, shameless plug, love for you guys to go to kentuckycomeback.com and sign up for the network on that website, because once session rolls around, we're going to have quite a few criminal justice issues and substance use disorder recovery issues that we're going to be pushing for. And we need your help on those things because it's critical to get people back in their communities, get them healthy. The pandemic has made this an even bigger issue because, I mean, think about trying to go through recovery and being isolated, not having your job. For every 1%, the unemployment rate goes up. The overdose death rate goes up by 3.6%, which is startling. But so this is something that we're really focused on. We're really trying to make sure that these issues are addressed. We have a bill in partnership with Representative Bowling, Adam Bowling, called Recovery Ready Communities. He's filed that bill, or he is this coming week. So we're trying to make sure that all of our communities across Kentucky are focused on treatment and prevention, and we're ready to help people as they are recovering, or if they're ready to recover, and keeping people out of prison and making sure they get the treatment that they need. So that is a huge focus of ours. Reforming the criminal justice system. I've talked about this a little just now. These things go hand in hand, and this is part of our Kentucky Comeback Initiative too. We'll be working on things like felony theft thresholds. That hasn't been changed since, I believe, the 1990s. Obviously, inflation and things, it's kind of out of whack at this point, and people are going to prison for things that we would prefer that they did not. Again, keeping people out of prison is a multiple fold issue for us, especially because it costs so much to incarcerate people. And if we can keep people out for low level offenses and things that they don't need to be behind bars for, it's critical to our state because those people have a hard time getting back on their feet, getting employment, being members of their community. And again, corrections is one of our biggest costs in our state budget. It's drowning us along with pensions and Medicaid and a couple of other things. Those are our biggest spend items. So the correction system definitely needs to be changed in order to save the state money, to get people back to work, to get people back to their lives and not ruin someone's life, and make sure that people have a second chance. Invest in education. Education is such a huge issue right now. Schools have been closed. Kids are learning from home. I know that a lot of us, I don't have children, but a lot of you do. You're working from home. You're trying to teach your kids from home. It's been a hard time this year. And not only are we concerned that maybe kids aren't getting the education that they need, or they're not learning what they need to, but it's also just, we have to figure out how we move forward from this pandemic in terms of education. Education has always been the #1 strategic top priority of the Kentucky Chamber, because without a good education system, you have no workforce, you have nothing. It all starts with education. So that is once again a critical issue for us, especially as we've seen so many struggles in terms of education throughout the pandemic. A focus on childcare. Again, the pandemic has made a huge issue for childcare. We already had places in Kentucky that are considered childcare deserts, which means there's not enough or there's no childcare in a certain area. The pandemic has made that even worse. The restrictions and things like that. We've seen facilities close down completely. They've been under restrictions where they have to have a certain amount of kids in a room, and then they needed more staff to take care of that. It's been very hard, but childcare is such an important workforce issue because, again, we have to have good education and good childcare systems in order for our workforce to be able to come to work and do what they need to do and feel safe with their children somewhere too. So even more of a focus for us now. We know that early childhood education, which is part of this too, is so critical to the long-term success of Kentucky children. So this plus the impacts of the pandemic are such a huge issue for employers across the state, and it's a huge focus for us in 2021, as it has been. Our signature industries. So we've seen, obviously, the Supreme Court made a decision about historic racing, where they overturned it. That's actually quite a bit of money that Kentucky brings in. And so we are focused on making sure that that is reinstated. We're also focused on bourbon bills this year. You know, we saw the shipment of alcohol bill pass this last session. The regulations are coming close to being done on that. But things like bourbon and horse racing sports betting, things like that. These are all things that could help us bring in revenue as well as support some of our signature industries. So they will be huge priorities of ours once again as well. So I know I saw some stuff in the chat I haven't had a chance to look at yet. Try and pull that up. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, I believe. And then Amy, if you want to ask me some of the questions or you want me to read the chat box, whatever you would like.
Well, I can ask, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can ask, as you were going through the gas tax, we had
Mhm.
one participant that was asking, why is it taking so long? And not to put Representative Prunty on the spot as well, but they were asking if Representative Prunty would be supporting that in the upcoming session. So that's kind of twofold. Jacqueline, I'll let you start to tell why it's taken so long, because it's been out there for a few years.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question. Again, this has been something we've been pushing for 5 years. Why it's taking so long is it never seems like it's a good time. You know, legislators are, it's either an election year or the support's not there. It's a tough issue because, again, a tax doesn't sound fun to anybody. And it is a gas tax increase. But for most people, that means not much at all over a year span, at like literally at all. And for every 10 cents we raise the gas tax, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's very important. We've been pushing 10 cents. The bill may be higher than that this year, or it could stay at 10 cents, or it could be negotiated down. But again, I think that the issue has always been, it's not fun to vote on any kind of tax. And this year it'll be hard because you're in the middle of a pandemic and you want to raise a tax. So, but again, we all have to look at it as a way of keeping ourselves and our families and our communities safe. And it's such a critical issue for business. So that is kind of, from my perspective, why it's taken so long and what our hurdles will be this year. And I'll turn it over to Representative Prunty to have her opinion on this as well.
Yes, thanks, Libby, for having me. And thank you, Jacqueline, for getting on and pitch hitting for Ashley. It's been all the reasons that Jacqueline said, and I actually, Secretary Gray came to, or not came, he zoomed in our caucus retreat last week, and I just told him, I said, you know, it is difficult because of the pandemic and so many people not working and not getting their unemployment insurance. I'm still getting emails from folks who haven't gotten a penny since March. And so it's difficult. My constituents are yelling, you know, no tax, no tax, no tax, particularly in these times. So, you know, my road district engineers have advocated for this to me the whole time I've been in office, and I can see the need. And Jacqueline, I would recommend, when you said it's a consumer, I would say if you all, with your communications, if you all could communicate that it's a consumer fee, that everybody uses it, that, you know, arrives on the roads. If you can maybe get the pitch out there that it might be more palatable to folks if it was, the message was good as to how it's being used. And I would also recommend maybe negotiating it down. I haven't talked to Sal yet, but if you could start with something and not have to go for the whole thing during these times. I realize it's a need, and I've proven I could take a tough vote, and I would support it if I feel like it's reasonable across the board for everybody, for individuals, you know, individual consumers and also businesses. So I know we need economic development in the 15th district, and I know that it's a need. But those are just kind of the things that I'm looking at, and I've tried to communicate to the executive branch.
Absolutely. Those are very good points. And I will say that it's not just the Kentucky Chamber. Like Representative Prunty said, people in her district have been telling her about their support since she got elected. We have something called the Kentucky Infrastructure Coalition that is a huge group of all kinds of different groups. The Kentucky Chamber, the Kentucky League of Cities, Kentucky Association of Counties, the judge executives, it's the road contractors. It's a huge group, Toyota, businesses plus associations. I would say there's like 30 groups in that coalition. And we do communicate quite a bit about it being a consumption fee. We've tried to get a bunch of messages out there Sal Santoro, every time I do an interview with him or he interviews, he does talk about, he calls it a consumption fee more than anybody. And he talks about maybe the total that you have to pay over a year would maybe be like a $10 to $20 additional per year, which is not a huge cost, especially when we are all using the roads significantly. We've had some paid advertisement out there over the last couple years, and we've done some radio and some TV. But here's the biggest thing, especially to Representative Prunty's point and why we need your help. We will, once session starts, we'll use our system called Phone to Action once again, where we will send an email and we'll ask you to just click on the link, put in your name and your address, and it automatically knows who your legislator is. And you can send them a message because, again, as Representative Prunty said, she's hearing from constituents, don't raise taxes, don't do this, don't do that, especially in this time, which we completely understand. But as you're seeing, at least some on this call support this. All of the Kentucky Chamber membership supports it. So we need people to tell their legislator that they support this so they feel safe enough to take that vote. Another reason I think that it's taken a long time to get this done is I know people are scared of getting voted out because of a vote like this, because it is a tax, but we have evidence and polling data from different states that show that people that take this vote don't get voted out of office. We've tried to show that to some as well. It's a tough issue, and we realize that it's not sexy either, I mean, at all. So it's a difficult issue to get done, especially as we're not seeing, the roads are in your area, they may be some huge issues, but overall it doesn't seem like that big of a pressing issue. But even right now, per year, we have $200 million of repairs that have to be done that we currently can't pay for with the current budget. And then again, that doesn't include anything else. That's just a deficit that we're currently running in terms of what we need to be doing. So it is a huge issue. It will only continue to get worse the longer we put it off. It's already gotten worse because of the pandemic. So again, we're really going to want your help in 2021 on these issues and would love for you to reach out to your legislator.
Jacqueline, do you have a good feel on that? Like, what are the odds a gas increase will pass this session? Is it more favorable now, or are we dealing with issues because of the pandemic?
From my perspective, I wish I had a better answer for this, but I feel about the way I do every time we go into session. Again, Representative Santoro is making a bigger push. He's making it clear that this is something that has to get done already. Whereas in sessions past, we would kind of wait until the bill was finalized and then we'd start pushing, and that's usually halfway through session. But I feel about the same I do every year, especially because of the big issues that have to be tackled in 2021, the other year, the budget, unemployment stuff, all of these issues are so big. And here's the other thing. Again, these elections, I don't think anybody saw election night results coming, huge sweeps, especially in the House, and the Senate picked up even more members. So this is a lot of new members coming in to the legislature who are brand new, who are not used to these issues, who have not been educated on them, who are going to be very overwhelmed. And so that's going to be a tough vote for some of them to take as well. But again, that's why it's so critical that we have the voice of their constituents talking about why this is so necessary and the fact that they really want these issues passed.
Awesome. I have another question. Can you discuss specific steps we're taking to support affordable, robust broadband access for non-metro areas?
That is a fantastic question. And obviously we realize that broadband is so critical, especially throughout the pandemic. We're seeing huge issues. I saw in the survey results that your area is feeling the pain of that, especially as you're trying to work from home and educate from home. So far, we have really been working with the administration. We've been reaching out to them directly, writing letters, saying that something has to be done. The administration has put together a task force to begin to come up with some solutions about how we deal with this issue. The Kentucky Chamber is a member of that task force. And so we will be working on that. Obviously, we've seen some new broadband things through the Kentucky, oh gosh, I cannot remember the name of it, but basically what Governor Steve Beshear and Representative Rogers put together to make sure that there was more broadband. We're seeing that deployed finally in some areas. So that is Kentucky Wired. Thank you, Jack. I really struggled there for a second. Yeah, Kentucky Wired is finally, we're starting to see some of that. We've seen some big fights in the legislature in the last couple of years of why are we funding this if it's still not done? We're over budget, we're over time. We're finally starting to see that launch in some ways, but that's not going to be enough. Obviously, we know that. And so we're in some major discussions with the administration as well as, some of our members about solutions. So we're talking every day about how to figure this out, because it is one of the more critical issues, because even once this pandemic is over and we're vaccinated and things go back to normal, people are still going to be, I see a lot of businesses not coming back to the brick and mortar. That's a costly thing. And so I know a lot of people are going to continue to work from home. And so then again, you're going to have good broadband for your employees and things like that. So it's going to continue to be a huge issue. We want to see something done about it sooner than later. So I know some of those discussions are underway. Ashley Watts, unfortunately, would be better to answer this than me because she's been working directly on those issues. But I do want you guys to know that we've been writing letters, we've been talking to the administration, we're talking to our members, and we are involved in a process to come up with some recommendations on how the state can improve broadband access.
Does anybody else have any questions for Jacqueline? You can put in the chat box. Those are great questions. Thank you all for participating. In this pandemic era, it's very difficult for our speakers to speak to themselves on a computer screen. So your all's interaction is greatly appreciated, right, Jacqueline?
Yes, absolutely. And it's all, we've all gotten to the point where we're used to just staring at ourselves on a screen, but it still doesn't feel any less lonely.
Okay, I have another one that's come up. What specific limitations on the governor's emergency powers will the legislature consider?
That's a great question, Will. And I know that throughout this entire interim, they have been working with lawyers and talking about specific ways that they actually could make a difference on this. I'm not sure about any of the specific ways they will tackle, but I can guarantee you it's going to be the first thing. When January comes and they come back in, and I'm sure Representative Prunty can speak to this more, that's going to be what happens in the very first week. And during a 30-day session, they come in for 1 week in January, then they go back home, and then they come back in February. So, but that 1 week, usually they don't do much. That's the first thing they're going to do. I can guarantee you that. Representative Prunty, some of the exact
I
stuff.
can speak to that. It's a matter of trying to craft good long-term policy moving forward, no matter who the governor is, no matter who's in the majority. That law, when it was enacted in 1998, was intended for a short-term crisis such as a natural disaster. It was never intended to be in place for 9 months. And what it would require is that the governor, whoever the governor is, would call the legislature in to consult. There's been absolutely no consultation throughout this whole period. And I'll just tell you, I'll just be real frank with you. I had a small business before Memorial Day. Our local health department was going to vet some businesses and churches, and if they were going to follow the rules, allow them to start opening, kind of a pressure release valve prior to the dates that were on the horizon for businesses, some small businesses and churches to open. And he was smacked down, and he had to close before it ever got started. And I was told that he was, when they checked him out, they were going to follow the rules. And he said, I'm being discriminated against because I'm not a Walmart or a Rural King. And I told our health department director, I said, the governor needs to know this. It needs to help inform him as he moves forward, because if it's happening down here, it's probably happening all over the state. And so it's to try to require any governor to consult the legislature. For instance, with the $865 million and I've been told it's a line of credit, but it's that when he borrowed that money from the federal government to put in the unemployment trust, there was no consultation with the legislature, and we're the ones that have to craft the budget. And so, and then this is getting put on the backs of the small businesses. So I just, if it were me, if I was in that spot, I've told Dr. Stack, I've told Secretary Friedlander, I said, I said, I wouldn't want y'all's jobs necessarily, but I said, if I was in y'all's position, or if I was in his position, I'd be calling people all over the state and saying, what's going on in your neck of the woods? What's going on in your neck of the woods? Let's try to get our heads together and figure out what might be best. And so it's not a matter of just clamping down on Governor Beshear. It's trying to look at long-term policy moving forward. If this situation ever happens again, that any governor would have to consult to try to make the best decisions for all of Kentucky. So we just feel like that some of these orders have squashed our small businesses, and let them choose, let them have the freedom to choose, because during this time, there were businesses that were doing great with curbside. Some of them, their business went up with curbside. Some of them wanted to open, but some of them just wanted the freedom to decide for themselves if they could follow the precautions and wear the masks, do the sanitizing, hand wash, and all of that. They just wanted the freedom to choose. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I hope that answers your question, Will.
All right, Jacqueline, we have a few more on here. Any idea how the UI costs for employers will go up? This person said theirs has already tripled.
I saw that. And Jack, I've been trying to find you a good answer. We actually just put a story up on the bottom line this morning about UI. The chamber's kind of taken a look at some predictions, and it looks like the average employer could see it go up by $100 per employee. It's still very unclear, and it all deals with a very complicated schedule that I tried to read about and understand at one point. But it's going to be different for every business. Some of our manufacturing members have said it would be millions for them, obviously, but it's going to affect every single employer in the state, which is why it's so critical. And again, I wish I had a better answer for you in terms of what exactly the dollar amount is going to look like. Again, the most recent information that I have is that it could be about $100 per employee for the average employer. But regardless, this is a huge cost that is going to fall on the state and on the state's employers. And the only way that we could see it fixed even further is if we have another federal stimulus package, if there is any more CARES Act dollars that he could allocate that way, because it is, again, it's not you all's fault that this happened in any way. The recession wasn't either, but this is an even different situation because this was unprecedented in terms of the numbers. It happened overnight rather than a slow burn. I mean, it affects everybody. Again, even if you didn't lay anybody off, this is going to be a hit for you while you've already had to do so much other things over the last 9 months. So I think Amy put that story I wrote this morning in the chat. There's more stories. If you just go to the bottom line and search unemployment insurance up at the top, it'll give you all of the stories I've written on it. So unfortunately, off the top of my head, I don't have a lot of those numbers, but hopefully that will be helpful to you.
You'll see next that Angela Carter put in that they've encountered issues with COVID relief funding for things like utilities that have been advertised. But when their clients go to apply for assistance, they're told the funds have already been expended. Do we know if there will be additional funds available? You kind of alluded to that about another CARES package or money, but do you have any more insight into that?
So unfortunately, a lot of those things have expired. They have already been given out. I mean, and every time we get information about that kind of thing, we try and communicate with our members and to our lists. Even, during the pandemic, we've not only been communicating with members, we updated our communications lists. My email list now goes to people who have been in contact with the chamber in any way. They don't have to be a member because we know all businesses need this kind of help. I do think it will come down to another CARES Act fund or another stimulus package from the federal government because that's what it's going to take. Honestly, a lot of this stuff has to be handled at the federal level. So what we've been seeing right now, obviously, we're going to have a new president and we still are not quite sure about some of the U.S. Senate and things like that. So there are a couple proposals floating around right now. One's bipartisan, but that's already been kind of struck down. It's all going to depend on whether or not they can reach an agreement. It's not looking beautiful right now, but I mean, I think that they all kind of feel the pressure to get something done because here in Kentucky and outside of what you're asking about, I'm just to divert just a little bit. At the end of this month and once 2020 begins, we will no longer have money to support contact tracing at the state level. We won't have money for testing. All of those things run out at the end of this year. And so that's very terrifying because once again, we're gonna have to craft the second year of the state budget. And if there is not another stimulus package, if the federal government does not come up with these kind of things, then the state does have to take that on or we have to stop them completely. And so we are pushing every single day. We're having people contact our federal delegation. We're writing letters that something has to be done because it really does have to get done. Not only for, these things that we're talking about, not just for UI, not just for all these things that people want, because the states are going to be in deep, deep, deep trouble. And businesses too, obviously, but businesses have been in trouble on that. But it's going to be very dirty and very messy if we don't have something figured out on that. So unfortunately, I don't have a very clear picture right now, but I don't think anybody does what the federal landscape is going to look like and when they're going to come to an agreement. I know that it's getting hopefully closer, but I know that McConnell is worried about what Trump would sign on his way out versus what he wouldn't. And, you know, McConnell deserves credit for trying to balance those type of things too, because he is the one that's in the middle of that all the time, trying to say, okay, that's fine, but it's not going to get done because of this and things like that. So again, don't envy anyone's position in the federal delegation. I don't envy the governor's position. These are tough decisions that have to be made, but they've got to do something because we're all in trouble if they don't.
That's true.
I'm so much fun to hear from. It's very
Well, I mean, it is what it is, and that's why we have so people can understand, you know, where, I mean, we're all in this battle together. Would we support a tax incentive specifically for remote workers to move from other high tax, high cost states to Kentucky, even on a solo basis? Have you heard any conversation about that?
I personally haven't heard any of that kind of conversation. Maybe some of our lobbyist team has or anything like that. I'm not sure any of our members have brought that kind of idea to our attention though. I know we haven't vetted it through our process, the process I was talking about earlier. So I don't think that anyone has, in terms of our membership, has brought that to us yet. If you're a member of the Kentucky Chamber, bring that to us and we will vet it if we've got support for that. But I'm sure, again, if that is part of pro-growth tax reform and our members feel that way, then I'm sure that we would be willing to, but we have not had any of those type of conversations at this point, as far as I'm aware, unfortunately.
Well, and thinking outside the box too, you know, you've got to start thinking about stuff like that. They could bring in additional incentives for people to be a part of Kentucky, but part of this great state.
Right.
Will said as the mayor in office during 2009 ice storm, he relied on the Chapter 39 emergency powers. Since Chapter 39 applies to cities and counties, will the limitations focus purely on the governor's powers, or will it also limit powers of mayors and judge executives in similar events?
That is a very good question, Will. And it looks like Representative Prunty has dropped off. I bet she would know a lot more than I would. But again, I know that they have been working this entire interim on specifics, on working with lawyers to know exactly what they can and can't do. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but I know that they're mainly just focused on the governor. I don't think that they want to have any adverse effect on our cities and counties, especially because they don't want to hear that at home, obviously. But I don't think they would ever intentionally do that. But if you feel that that is something that they might do either on accident or intentionally, and you feel that that's something that they shouldn't be doing, then definitely raise that with your state senator and your state representative, because again, it's going to be the first thing they do. And they've been talking about it for a long time. They haven't really unveiled what exactly they're going to do. But the Supreme Court case where the Kentucky Supreme Court unanimously backed Beshear definitely added fuel to that fire. So they are ready to go because, again, they've been hearing from constituents, rightly so, about the adverse effects that some of these regulations have had. We've seen businesses close down. Libby has told me about some in your area. It's devastating. And we haven't even seen the least of it yet. I really think that in 2021, we're going to see a lot of other businesses go under. I think a lot of them have been holding on. I don't think that a lot of them are going to make it. And so I do understand why this is such a huge issue for them, especially to protect their constituents. But it's a tough issue and it's legally going to be a battle, just like it's been previously. So unfortunately, I feel like I'm pretty good at getting down in the weeds, but that's a little too far in the weeds for me, unfortunately. I wish I knew a better answer. And again, Representative Prunty might, but it's going to be interesting and it's going to be intense, especially in that first week.
Well, Jack Whitfield's going to help take care of some of that. Will he's going to speak to his local reps. So you all,
Good.
That's great. I mean, building a team locally together, we certainly encourage that. We want to help be a part of that. So make sure that you count on us if you have questions or concerns that you need our opinion or resources from. Make sure and reach out as you all have these local discussions. Does anybody else have questions for Jacqueline? This has been great. And we really, really appreciate you guys putting some questions in there. If this is a conversation, this isn't a speech. Jacqueline's not the professor. We just want to have a conversation and know that help you guys understand that We may instigate the conversation, but you all need to be asking questions. You all need to be sharing things locally. You need to be questioning and sharing questions with your elected officials, both locally at the state and federal level. Don't be shy, especially during this time. You've got to make sure that your voice is heard. I guess if we don't have any other questions, Jacqueline, if you have any final words, if you don't, I will give it back to Libby. Libby, would you like to close up the conversation with your community, please, ma'am?
Well, thank you all so much again for joining us. And I want to echo something that Amy said. This is just the beginning of the conversation for us, and it's not going to end here. We do have a policy committee. And if you're interested in joining that policy committee, please reach out to me. We are going to start meeting beginning in January. We do have a chairman, which I'm really excited about. I'm not going to mention his name because I didn't ask him ahead of time. But we will start meeting regularly in January. And I'm so grateful for Jacqueline. She walked me through and we kind of analyzed the survey together. So thank you for everybody that participated in the survey and offered their feedback. We have a lot of great information to start with, so I'm really grateful for that. But as we close, I want to say thank you again to Bob Berry and Jennifer Keach. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you to Big Rivers. We appreciate everything you do for the chamber. You are wonderful members and partners, and we are very appreciative for everything that you do, not only for Hopkins County, but for our region. And Amy and Jacqueline, we can't do anything without the Kentucky Chamber. You provide such great resources to us, and you will help mend us as a state and a community. And we are so grateful that you are our partner as well. And we're thankful for those resources, and we are stronger because of you. But if there are no other questions, I will go ahead and close this out and just say thank you again. And please reach out to us if there's anything that we can do here at the Chamber. And I'm sure the Kentucky Chamber would say the same thing, but please reach out, president@hopkinschamber.com, and our phone number is 270-821-3435. You can call us anytime, day or night, and we are happy to help. So thank you very, very much. Bye, everybody.